Okay. Okay. All right. That's a thing. That's that thing. Hi, friends. Holy cow, that was fun. That was good. That. I mean, seriously reminiscent of Hotline Miami for me, and I think only because I don't play a lot of games in that genre, and I don't know if that's the last time that I did it, but that is one of the last times that I did it. Certainly, doing it on stream. It just brings back a lot of memories of just running through the same sort of scenario over and over and over again, and trying not to die so much. But I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this much more, and it's interesting. We got a couple of interesting questions from the chat, so let's dive into that. But I think that it's interesting to look at this in comparison to other platformers and other Massacre games, and to think about how the aesthetics of it are set up, and what it's really trying to do, and the way that it splits its attention between two really distinct audiences. I think between a more casual and a more hardcore audience, and does it not just elegantly, but with a sense of tension between them, so that, like, I think the best games, it's about finding your place, your skill level, your level of investment, your interest level, and having the game sort of adjust to that, rather than demanding that you play it a certain way. All right, let's just dive right in. Also, I announced on the Twitch thing, I have a key for a Steam key for Super Rude Bear Resurrection, and like I said, we're gonna go just like 20-30 minutes, and then I'll raffle it off at the end. So, first question. is punny. Thank you, Captain Amber. Do you think this game will remain bearable for the rest of the game, or do you think there will be a point where it gets too frustrating to continue? Do you think the corpse mechanic can entirely mitigate this, or is there only so much it can do? Well, okay, so there's a couple of things here. One is, this game in a lot of ways plays like any other Massacre game, where there's actually like there's a level of flow that is optimal for playing it, and it's not necessarily speed running the game, but it's also not like inching through the game. And for a player like me, I definitely can feel tentative. And being tentative, being sort of cautious, is not always the most effective way to approach a level. And we saw it at the end when I said, like, I have 6 minutes left. I'm just going to see what I can do in 6 minutes. And I like blasted through a significant chunk of that last level before I even hit a wall. So Massacre, I think, has always played with emotion, with flow, with I'll call it flow rather than something like Zen, but like it or even calm. But there's definitely an aspect of the game pushes you to get frustrated. If you get frustrated, if you get impatient, But also if you get like overly cautious or timid, all of those things end up being bad for you and feed back into frustration. I mean, some of it is just like keep your eye on the ball. We are good as human beings, as animals. We're good at like making unbelievably fast unconscious calculations and reacting to circumstances. We're better at catching a ball if we're not thinking about it than if we're actually thinking about the mechanics of catching the ball, right? And so some of this, I think, some of this is built on the genre, on the tropes, on the standards, on the just the best practices of the genre, and works the same way. So that's all to say, like any Massacre game, there are times when you get frustrated, when the thing to do is step away and come back, or calm down, take a breath, come back to the game, do something different, and then come back to it. And that changes everything. What this game in particular is doing is trying to mitigate that as the only solution to a frustration feedback loop. It's trying to actually nip that frustration feedback loop in the bud by changing the game as you play to become easier. Rubber banding, right? Rubber banding is a term that's often used disparagingly. It's a term that I first heard used in relation to Mario Kart, the Mario Kart games, and especially Mario Kart 64, but I think all of the Mario Kart games have strong rubber banding mechanics where if you are in first place, then the items that you get are not that good. If you are in last place, you are much more likely to get extremely disruptive items like a blue shell that can that turns you into a kingmaker, that allows you to just like totally screw over whoever's in first place. So there's an element of like, if you're in first place, the game is harder. If you're in last place, the game is easier, and so that keeps everything competitive through the whole game, right? Nobody's going to take an early lead and just go out of there. All right, that's a question. So this is doing the same thing. The game is harder if you're good at it. And the more you die, the easier the game becomes. So it's rubber banding. It's helping you find a place where you are at a match for the difficulty of the game. How effective is that going to be long term? That's the original question that I'm supposed to be answering. And it's hard to say, right? It is entirely dependent on how the game is designed. Clearly, I mean, just what you would expect from any game is that the difficulty, and especially a Massacre game, the difficulty is going to ramp up as you go. So the early levels are easier. As you get further, it gets fucking insane. It gets really, really hard. The thing that's sort of an unknown, and this tracks with what Super Rude Bear is doing. The thing that's an unknown is like how much does the game continue to use that core idea, that rubber banding, that ability to change the level between runs. How much does the game how much does it keep that in the sort of aesthetic of the game as the difficulty increases? Does it also ramp up the amount that the game helps you out and tries to meet you in the middle? And that's sort of impossible to know how it's going to progress over the long term, because it could go absolutely any way. But based on what I played, it seems like it's absolutely not leaving any of that behind. It's keeping it very, very much at heart. It's introducing new mechanics. It's introducing new mechanics that make the game more difficult and require me to do like new and different things faster and be clever and increase my reaction time and jump precision and blah blah blah. But it's also introducing new mechanics or new aspects of these mechanics that improve the way that rubber banding works. That actually make it so that like on the ice level, for example, now we've got these new spikes. There's spikes all over the place, but the spikes melt. And so I don't even need to pile up bodies to get over spike platforms anymore. It's just literally I'm never going to die on the same spike twice, because if I die on that spike, it disappears. It's gone. Drastically reducing the difficulty and brilliantly targeting the points that are potential difficulty spikes, even for me subjectively. So it's, there are places in a level where where players might have a harder time. There's a difficulty spike. Players die more. It's just, it's harder in that one spot. It's a thing that should, maybe it even, like, the designer looks at it and says, this shouldn't be that hard or that much harder than the previous thing, but that's where a wall is for a lot of players. It's not even that. It's, for me, it's if there's one jump that even if every other fucking player can make it, if I have trouble with this one jump, doesn't matter. I am only going to have to do it once. Or I'm only going to, like, die on that same spike once. And then the game essentially clears out that difficulty spike for me. It's really smart. It's really actually an elegant solution to to the challenge of creating a persistent flow state for the player. So, from what I can tell, the game is going to keep doing that. And so I think that my expectation based on what I played is that, I am going to keep enjoying it. I'm not going to get as frustrated with this game as I often get with Massacre games. I'm not going to want to put down the controller and walk away from it and possibly never pick it up again, because the game is being really, really diligent about giving me that rubber banding effect that changes the difficulty of the game as I play. Ice missiles freeze your... So Alex is pointing out that there's a bunch more mechanics in future levels. Ice missiles freeze your corpse in midair. Ice lasers can tractor beam them in and block up the corners. Stuff like that. Which all makes total sense to me, and sort of flips from the modality of dying just automatically makes the level easier, and switches it to dying might actually make some things harder in some cases. But because of the way the fairy works, it's so easy to scout ahead, to destroy corpses, and to just clear a screen like all at once. I'm actually not super worried about that. I mean, I don't know what it feels like to play it, but it seems like anything that I do that makes the game harder is pretty easy to undo. It just means that it creates a little bit more friction, right, for me between runs. Now, not only do I have to, like, start over at the last checkpoint, and do this stuff again, but I also have to think ahead and clear out stuff where there's corpses and blah blah blah. I'm curious, Alex, if you care to chime in, if your intention was for that death mechanic to sort of keep pace with the game the whole way, or is there a point where you sort of see the difficulty curves diverging more, and it becomes more important for a player to get things right, to sort of do the harder platforming stuff, versus or that it takes longer or is harder to grind through a certain part of it? Was that something that was intentional, or is that something that you tried to avoid? Okay, so from Alex, core design philosophy: death must always make the game easier, except in bonus levels where I get to be mean, and sometimes more puzzly. Love it. Love that core design philosophy. I think that's fantastic. That's what I hoped about. That's what I hoped for in the game when I sort of heard the concept behind the game. There's a part at the end where it might become a bit of a grind. There's a lot more of those traps that explode. And that sounds fine to me. Like, the idea of it being a grind isn't, I don't think that that's against the design philosophy, and I don't think that's against what makes the game interesting and fun to play. I think it would be possible as a designer to make that grind, really intentionally overly burdensome. And that might make me feel differently about it. But yeah, some amount of grind I think is totally in keeping with the way the game seems